Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Alternative Guitar Summit podcast, where we explore some of the great guitar players amongst us, as well as creative music in general. I want to remind you to please subscribe to the channel. And also, if you want more content like this, go to my Substack page, which is called Guitar Talk, or look at alternativeguitarsummit.com. Thanks for watching and listening.
Okay.
Greetings, everyone. I am with Max Clouth, who is a German guitarist who plays a double neck guitar, loves Indian music and jazz, and is a relatively new voice to me and a fantastic player. Welcome, Max.
Thank you very much. Hello, Joel.
So we met through our mutual friend, Anupam Shobakar, and Anupam, for anybody who doesn't know, has a record out on the AGS Recordings label, and he is also a double neck guitar player and somebody who knows Indian music and many other forms of music, and is an excellent guitarist. Now, how did you meet Anupam, and to what degree do you share his pursuits and interests?
I think we've met in Mumbai in 2014, maybe. I don't remember exactly how I met him, but I was looking for somebody who could, give me some guidance to apply fretless, the sarode technique to the guitar.
Yes.
Which, there's probably nobody better suited for that than Anupam, because he's a guitar player and a sarod player.
Yes.
So I learned a little bit from him, and then we stayed in touch and played together. Yeah, but I think the initial meeting was in Mumbai in 2014, I guess.
Yeah.
Back then he was playing mostly sarod, so I didn't actually know that he was playing guitar until I think 2-3 years ago, when he got his first double necks.
Yeah, he didn't start again, I should say, till fairly recently. But
Yeah.
And just before we start talking about your guitar playing, can we just see that double neck guitar, because it's really a beautiful instrument, and there's not many people who are doing that.
So I have one here that's kind of half semi-acoustic.
Yeah. Now, of course, with the Zoom settings, we're not going to be able to really hear adequately what you're doing. So I'm gonna probably plug in a little bit of your music somewhere during this, so people can check it out. Yeah, that looks, is it semi hollow body or totally hollow body?
It's semi, so there's a sustain block that goes through here, but the rest is hollow. But it's kind of like a 335, that kind of world. So this is kind of the Mark II. I have one previous one, which is a classical, more or less, like nylon strung classical guitar. And this one was my main guitar for a few years, and now I just got this one.
Oh,
That's
wow.
Mark III.
Woo.
uh,
That's beautiful.
and
Who makes that?
a guitar maker named Philip Neumann from Belgium, from Antwerp.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, this is kind of the latest iteration, and this time I think we managed to get some things right. So this one, I don't know if you can see it.
Oh,
It
yeah.
has a steel fretboard,
Okay,
like
so why did
very
you move
much
to the steel fretboard?
because I feel for my, you know what I hear in terms of fretless guitar playing is very much inspired or influenced by sarode playing.
Right,
I like this a lot. So I like this, what they call gamax,
right, right.
these kind of little, ornamentations. And I found out somehow that this really works best, at least for me, works best with a steel fretboard.
Okay. So I
And,
have made a study, informal as it is, of people who are combining jazz and Indian music over the
oh,
many
okay.
decades,
Uh-huh.
because it's always been a great interest to me.
Hmm.
Or one of the few people that I've met who's really tackled the fretless aspect of things. Um,
Yeah.
Obviously, that's got a lot of inherent challenges. When did you fall in love with Hindustani music, and did you grow up playing jazz or classical? What's your background? Rock and roll?
So yeah, rock and roll. But I'm a punk rocker actually.
Uh-huh.
But I started the first thing I learned was classical guitar, Western European classical, with playing with fingers and all. And I had a great guitar teacher when I was 8, 9 years old. Um, Wonderful teacher. And I think looking back now, I think we played, or I played pretty advanced, complex stuff as a little kid. But
Mhm.
somehow the classical guitar never really, was never really my planet in a way. So I left that lessons, but I always kept the guitar around. Actually, I always kept the guitar in my bed or near my bed back then. But the big revelation, first one was when I was around 12 and I was living in this little town near Frankfurt, and there was an Indian classical concert.
Hmm.
I don't remember who it was. I think it was some sitar player accompanied by some tabla player. Um, but I had no idea about that music at all. I didn't know what it was at all, but somehow it hit me in, somewhere near the heart, I guess. And since then, I was always thinking about, that this is actually the way of playing music that's the most honest way of playing music
Hmm.
because it's so
Bold
emotional and
state-
so improvised. Huh?
It's a bold statement. That's a powerful statement.
Yeah, well, that's what I felt at least. I mean, without understanding what they were doing exactly, but I felt hooked, I guess, in a way. Being 12 years old and not knowing what was happening there.
That's pretty young.
Yeah,
Well, I think it's really there. I think there are many people who explore aspects of Indian music, which would include me, but very few who really uh, go the next step and study it on guitar, and especially the fretless, which involves, of course, um, really dealing with the tuning of the
yeah,
rock, which is so it's really advanced work. It's a life's work, and
yes.
uh, I'm really admiring of how you're doing that. And I want to ask you how you're getting the sound you're getting. But first, tell us a little bit about your new record, because that's really what you're celebrating now, as I'm understanding it. It's called Neela, and your band is called Raga Work. That's WERK. And obviously, this is a group that's based compositionally on some Indian music precepts, and the way that you're soloing is obviously embodying the stuff that you've studied. but it's your music. It's not Indian music. Tell us about it.
Yeah, totally. Well, I would never say that I've learned Indian music, or that I play Indian music because
It's vast.
it's vast. I think any form of music is like an ocean, it's so huge. And actually, I think if people say that they play this music or they know this music, for me, that's always a sign of, they haven't seen the horizon really, they haven't seen how big it is in a way. So yeah, well, I would never say that I play Indian music or anything, but I love Indian music.
Yeah.
That's 100% sure. And for me, it always felt very natural to use certain things that I find fascinating about this music, use it in my way of guitar playing. And also with the fretless guitar, I guess I'm not really playing sarode style on the fretless guitar, but I love the sarode style. I love how it can sound somewhere close to a slide guitar, but you can also go completely sarangi vocal like if you want. Um, and everything in between. It has a super huge range of articulation and eventually emotions that you can express, I guess, with if you've really mastered the sarod like Anupam has, for example. Um, so for me, I was always drawn to taking the things that touched me and, do something with it in my way of playing. Um, so I guess on the new album, it's kind of we've really made an effort to make those Indian elements not really scream in your face. You know,
Yeah.
I
Sure.
I I don't like that, when people have learned a little bit of ragas or a little bit of konokol and, make such a big thing about, I rather like to do it the other way around. I like to hide it in the music. Um, but all the tracks have some Indian elements. There's either tihais, like complex rhythmical stuffs that
Mhm.
dissolves and um, is more or less mathematical. Like for example, in Rela Gadi, there's three variations of the same tihai, which goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Mhm.
And in Karela, there's also kind of a super complex tihai, but we try to make it sound groovy, not so dramatic or anything, but to
Uh,
make it sound like it's kind of developing from this kind of funky vibe.
hmm.
Um, and in Nila, in the title track, there's a lot of raga playing in my solo. Actually, there's some bits and pieces from a raga called Bimpalasi and Shahana, which are like Dorian.
Yes.
Um, which kind of course, like the Dorian scale kind of sits well in a more modal harmonic concept. I mean, you can move easily, I guess, from feeling the Dorian vibe with chords and all, go to Bimpalasi or go to this kind of, from the Kafi Ankh, from this raga family that is related to the Dorian scale. You can go there and then come back and play more, jazzy vocabulary.
Yes. That's great.
S-
Hey, but let's just back up for a second. Let's assume that many of the people watching this really don't know much about Indian music, which is very possible. They love guitar.
which is the same for me. I don't know much about it.
Well, but less than,
I'm learning.
yeah, no, I hear that. And I feel very much the same as you. I, I barely know anything. But I do know enough to know a bit about what I don't know. That's kind of my line. Uh,
Mhm.
give us you give guitar players a couple of things that they might check out or do just to kind of start down this journey and why you think it might be useful or interesting. From my perspective, um, the ornaments and articulation um, horizontally on
Hmm.
string instruments add a dimension to the way you can play the electric guitar, which is really beautiful and useful. And um, and I would say also when I was younger, I found even that just the exercises with paltas and learning how to play different groups of notes and odd figures over the
Hmm.
bar
Hmm.
line was really useful. So those are two things that I might mention. What about you?
I I always felt that, the way that we play jazz, especially here in Europe, because jazz music doesn't really come from here. So the way we play this music always has a certain, at least that's how I feel it. It has a certain academic notion to it, which I don't really like. I mean, I love jazz music because it's so direct. I don't like, when you transcribe 100 solos and then try to play like this and that. And I always felt that a lot of people around me were really playing in a way that I felt that the notes, the music don't mean much to them.
Hmm.
And Indian music, and especially, the more, I guess, more subtle aspects of playing, like for example on a sitar, on a sarod, of really, you know really entering the raga, getting really inside the notes, experiencing all the different relationships between, for example, I mean, there's, I don't know, there's probably 100 ways to go from the first to the second, from sa to re. There's maybe 100 possible options to approach only the second note of the scale. And in that way, for me, it was kind of, it opened my ears to what very little, musical material can actually mean. If you just play two notes, if you really feel it, you can tell a story with that. You can tell somebody who's listening, you can tell them how you feel. You
Yeah.
know, you can really express endless emotions through just very little. If you write it down, it's just GNA. But it's not that. It's so much more than that, because I think in Indian music, it really depends on you to fill the compositional, or the notes, to fill them with emotional content.
Right. With the Rasta.
And yeah, yeah, and with us playing jazz music, I felt with a lot of people that of course, if you practice your instrument, you can play scales, you can play licks, play vocabulary, you have all that, but it's so easy to fall into certain, routines and all that, and not really hear what you're playing anymore, not to really feel the relationship between the notes, not to really feel the articulation, to feel what it means, like to go from one note to the other, like dum ding or do or di,
Hmm.
all these aspects. So for me, that was really, it opened my ears, and I guess it gave me a different and certainly a more intimate relationship with notes and with music, you know.
Really makes sense. And just to kind of say that in my own words, what you're talking about is the value that Indian music places because it's all based on one scale. They're not using harmony in the way we are.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
value, the character, the emotion of each note in the scale, and the many ways that that can be exploited and explored, um, developed over centuries. And I think it uniquely happens in a music that has limited harmonic material. And I agree with you
Mhm.
that jazz can tend to being a place that encourages people to play a lot. Let's put it that way. And
Yeah.
I hear
Yeah.
that in your playing. You're a very lyrical player.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
oh,
I also love to play fast. I like all the aspects. I just feel what Indian music really gave me is I had this really interesting encounter with an Indian musician who is not alive anymore. Unfortunately, Dhruva Ghosh. I don't know if you've heard of him. Fantastic sarangi player and great musician. And I remember when I met him when in my early 20s, and I asked him how to play Alap. Alap is the rubato introduction, or it can start rubato and then go into a certain time feel or something. But I asked him how to play completely rubato, to play free, free in terms of time. And he said that he recommended to play one note and then wait until there's no other chance than to play another note. You play one note and then you wait as long as the next note comes to you.
that's a great
And
practice. You
I
know,
guess that's it. Yeah.
well, you could do the same thing when you're practicing soloing over a jazz tune. And
Hmm.
and I think, one of the exercises that I'm not really sure I learned this in indie music, but I've done it a lot more since I became acquainted with Indian music, is trying to practice on one string, trying to play a solo over a
Hmm.
jazz tune on one string, because the horizontal
Yeah.
choices limit you so much and you have to play melodically. And
Yeah.
it's amazing, actually, when you see what's possible with just or mostly horizontal playing, and well worth an exploration no matter what type of music you play on the guitar.
Hmm. Hmm. Because then you cannot fall back on premeditated whatever vocabulary, which can be great also. I mean, licks are great and all, but sometimes there is this, I feel in some moments you get into that zone where you cannot play something that you've played before. You should not play that if you want to do the music justice.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great point, and a good challenge for all of us. Now,
Yeah.
have you played in the States?
Not really. No, no,
Oh,
unfortunately not yet.
get
I'd love
over
to. I don't know what the situation is right now. I mean, we hear
pretty
so
bad.
many here on the news. There's
It's pretty
not
bad.
so great news lately.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I'd love to. I think Anupam told me also. I think I would definitely meet a lot of people that I would really love to listen to and to play with them
well, you might be able to just come
in
by
the
your
States.
and without your group fairly easily, and
Yeah.
make happen with musicians here. I know it's expensive to bring a group over. Hey, I want to make sure that I say before we get too much further that um, I encourage anybody who is listening and enjoying this content to subscribe to this channel. We want you to know about all the other things that are going on the Alternative Guitar Summit YouTube channel, many different interviews and approaches to the guitar that we're talking about. So, Max, when you sit down to practice, what is your how does your practicing balance the different things that you're exploring? Because presumably there's some degree of more classical Indian music practice that you're doing. Um, that's a question. And then also you're of course still working within a Western idiom. How are you? What do you work on?
Uh, sometimes more this, sometimes more that. So in March, I played a tour in India with a wonderful young tabla player, Ishan Ghosh. So for that, of course, I before that I was practicing a lot, to warm up again with the Indian, with the
Oh, so
more Indian classical.
just playing just Indian classical music?
Sort of. No, we played with a bass player,
Mhm.
a friend of mine, but we always played some portions of the shows we played like more or less classical
Oh,
in the
wow.
sense, that we played modal and tried to come up with more and more, trying to make more complex TIs and more complex rhythmic superimposit. How do you call that?
Different position.
Impositions? Is that how it's called?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was one part of that, and for that I practiced a lot, of course, Indian music before
Yeah.
that. But now I've just come from a short tour with the flamenco guitar player. So right now I'm still in the flamenco world, I'm very much in 12 beats, everything in my head
Uh,
because I was practicing that a lot. So I'm because I play a lot with very different people, in very different sounding contexts. So next thing is that we play a tour with Ragawerk, and then I'm back into that world, which is more jazz rock oriented.
hmm,
But I also love flamenco. I love Indian music. So usually these days I really practice what's next, you know.
of course. Yeah. Can you point us to recordings of the flamenco project that you're in, or is that not yet recorded?
Yes, there's something on YouTube.
Okay.
There's a piece called Prelude and Verdial, which is kind of a Paco de Lucia falsetta, Paco de Lucia guitar piece, which we arranged
Hmm.
for our duo. Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good. Um, well, one of the things that I think is really exciting about your playing is that you've clearly immersed yourself in the Indian music tradition in order to get where you are. And you're telling me that you are putting yourself in the challenging position of going to play classical music in India. So my hat is off to you. Uh, that that's
Well,
that's a lot of practicing that you've done to get to that.
yeah, well, I mean, we didn't play, we didn't really play hardcore classical Indian music, but we ended up playing, we came up with a piece that was in 13 beats, which I think is really cool because it's not also in the North Indian vocabulary, it's not super common, you know. So for Ishan, it was also very interesting to make something in that
Hmm,
thing. And yeah, I wouldn't say that we played like hardcore classical, but it was definitely, more towards the Indian classical world in terms of no harmony instrument, just completely modal and playing a lot with, that rhythmical stuff and T-highs and more raga oriented.
yeah,
But then again, I would never claim that I play Indian classical music because I respect that way too much. I'm learning.
I understand. I understand. And that. So tell me, you're you're in a you're in Europe. You're in Frankfurt. In Europe, are there others that you know of who are doing what you're doing with Indian music? Maybe it's on the guitar or other instruments. Do you have a small coterie of fellow practitioners?
Honestly, in Germany, there's of course Trilok Gurtu is living here,
Mm-hmm.
so he's a great player to me.
Yeah.
Um, but guitar players who play, or who really seriously work on Indian music and try to incorporate that in their vocabulary, I really haven't met anybody in Germany so far. Maybe they are there, but I've never heard anybody, I mean, a lot of guitar players, they are very easily satisfied, when you show them a little bit of, gamma playing and all that's that. But for me, that's not really Indian music, that's not really doing the music justice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Hey,
I haven't met anybody. I've met a couple of classical musicians, flute players, for example, who play also Indian music very well.
yeah. Do you know a saxophone player who's an old friend of mine who lives outside Boston, Phil Scarf? And
I
his
think I've heard the name, but I haven't heard his music.
Well, he's got a group called Nataraj that has literally been around for 40 years.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
also combining classical music, uh, Indian classical music, and jazz. And it's a great group. And he's really studied Indian music hard. And he goes and plays
Uh-huh.
classical concerts on saxophone in India at this point.
Hmm.
Um, I think
Oh, okay.
70 at this point. Well worth checking out and maybe contacting as an ally
Oh,
in this pursuit.
okay.
There are not many people
Oh, okay.
mention him.
Yeah, that's interesting because right now I'm thinking of a saxophone player named Carl Clemens,
Oh
who's
yes,
I
Carl and
guess
Carl.
pretty beautiful player,
Yes.
and also George Brooks. I'm really enjoying what he does.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there
Yep.
was in Germany there was the saxophone player Charlie Mariano,
Oh
um, who was doing great stuff back in the day.
yes.
I'm sure that there are people, I'm sure there are also great guitar players. The interesting thing is that I think a lot of young musicians in India who play guitar now play jazz music because they love it, but they also have that. I mean, they've been listening to Indian classical music, so they play somewhere in between. There's a guitar player named Abhay Nayampally from Mumbai who plays really good Carnatic South Indian music on the guitar.
Oh wow. Well, I
Yeah, he's a
my impression is there are more rock-based players in India who are incorporating some Indian music things like metal players.
yeah,
I,
yeah, like Shivaraj and his band,
I think
Shivaraj Nataraj.
yeah, I think there's some jazz players. And we've had a couple of people come to our guitar camp from India, but I think that's
Okay.
slowly growing. So,
Mhm.
hey, you got to lead the
I've
way, man.
I'm listening to a lot of yeah, I'm listening to a lot of great musicians from India. I mean, classical, but also people who play Western music. So that's fascinating what
Well,
they do there.
you feel free to send me any of their music. I'm always interested.
Totally. Yeah, I will. But I've been listening to your music also because I remember, I think back in 2014, Anupam was already mentioning you. So I've been listening to that. I remember listening to a piece of music where you were playing this dobro kind of
Yes.
guitar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. Yeah,
Well, one of the recordings.
that was very, very subtle. I loved that.
Hmm. The recording I'm most proud of that I did with Anupam is Still Point Turning World, in which we had a percussion quartet and a jazz quartet
Hmm.
with Anupam, and also Selva Ganesh is on that. And that was a very
Hmm.
ambitious project with a lot of composing. Impossible to play live, really. We tried once, twice to say.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Hmm.
but that for me was more approaching this music from the compositional standpoint than the playing standpoint. I kind of it was almost like a concerto for Arnapam to play on sarode.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
so much featured my guitar playing.
Hmm. Yeah, I remember listening to a piece of music that sounded really orchestrated in a way,
Hmm.
in terms of, not so much coming from like didn't sound like a jam that turned into a piece, but more like something really compositional. and super orchestrated and delicate. But I love that. I love the sound of the sarod and the guitar together.
Well, that
And there was actually
since
there was actually I think in the 60s there was already an Indian classical sarod player who switched to guitar and made a fretless guitar. I
I
don't remember his name right now.
yeah, I think you mean a guy I took some lessons with when I was much younger, and shame on me if I space out on his name. Oh my God. I'm going to put it in the text above the Zoom meeting when I remember it. When we stop, I'll remember it. But he was living in New York, and John McLaughlin took some lessons with him early on too. And
Mhm.
he was playing a fretless nylon string guitar when I met him.
Yes.
Well, it's really been wonderful to talk with you about this common interest that we have, and I will put the name and of your record, as well as the where it's, you know, a link to it in the in this video when we're done. And
Thank you.
I encourage people to check you out. You're doing some wonderful work, and I want to thank you for the discussion today.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Well, over and out from Alternative Guitar Summit and Max Clouth.
Perfect. Thank you, Joel.
You're most welcome.